Hi, this is Laurie Niles from Violinist.com, and today I wanted to talk to you about why violin teachers are so picky about posture. It can sort of help to know why a violin teacher is asking you something really specific, like to move your thumb or change the way you're holding something. Because at first it can seem like, this seems like a random request. So I'm going to go through some of the most common things that violin teachers kind of look for and explain to you why each of them matters. So let's start out with basic position when you put your violin on your shoulder. There's a few things that you should keep in mind. You need to have your head straight, your spine straight, and your shoulders straight. And it's basically for alignment. So that means, you're not going to make your head be like this. You're not going to crouch over like this. So the idea is that your head is straight, your violin is on your shoulder, you kind of can look over, and then you don't want to scrunch your shoulders up. The main reason is to prevent injury and, to keep your body in alignment. And everything from your, when we talk about chin rests and shoulder rests, whatever it is that you decide on or that your teacher is suggesting to you, it should all be to that end of, keeping your head straight, your spine straight, and your shoulder down and not scrunched up and, a straight position. So then the next thing that I want to talk about is your violin thumb. So you've probably heard a teacher ask you to keep the thumb basically straight. So I'll turn it around here. Straight thumb. What's the reason for this? Well, mostly it's because if you don't have a straight thumb, that can be a symptom of some other things. The biggest problem with a crooked thumb is that it can mean that you're just grabbing the violin, like this. And when you grab the violin, this is a problem because it inhibits your vibrato. You need to be able to come away to do vibrato. You need to be able to shift. If you're grabbing, you can't really go anywhere. And so that's one of the reasons that we ask for a straight thumb. The other reason, if your thumb is up, I'm just going to exaggerate this a little, but if your thumb is, up and over here, you're putting your fingers in this kind of torturous position. You can see how it kind of affects everything else. I've kind of trapped my hand in this way, and, so that is another reason why we look for a straight thumb, because a straight thumb allows you to sort of get up and over the fingerboard. So that is the second thing. That's one of the reasons for the straight thumb. Now, a reason, if you have a particularly long thumb, it might not be as straight because, it might just stick up. You might still be, having this good position where you're not doing that, but the thumb is just tall and maybe it's a little bit bent. Then, maybe that's an exception to the rule. So that's why I'm sort of explaining these rules to you, so you can kind of know that some exceptions are actually okay. But you just have to make sure that the mechanics are going to work for you. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about is having the elbow underneath the violin. So the reason for this is also to put your hand in this good position. Again, if your elbow is coming behind, look what's happening to my fingers. I like to tell people, you see this little line in my index finger right there, and there's a little bone right here. That is where you're going to be touching the violin. If you're underneath there, look at this. I've trapped my finger. I can't reach anything. If you're up here, then you have all of your finger free. So if you're doing this, you're kind of getting your fingers into this funny position where they sort of have to come up and over in order to play. And the other thing is, you don't want it way far forward. So it's not like a matter of like, have it as far forward as possible, and the farther forward you have it, the better. Woo! No, because this is going to cause you a real strain, like in your shoulder and your arm, and it's going to make you get really tired playing the violin. So you want it under, maybe a little bit forward. It really depends on your body, but you don't want it like coming back. This is another thing that can happen. Your posture just starts, your violin starts rolling down the front. So, underneath the violin. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about is the wrist, and this is a really common problem that people can have. The ideal position is pretty straight. You see, I could kind of draw a line here. One of the teachers I know likes to call this a candy cane. You see, like there's a little shape of a candy cane there. It's kind of a cute concept, and that can help people. But what you really don't want is the collapsed wrist like this. Because look at the position of my hands. Look at my fingers. Instead of like being able to kind of go up and over like this, they're doing almost this grabbing kind of motion in order to set down on the fingerboard. So this is just not a great idea. And then if you do too much of this, also you're creating this problem with being able to move your fingers and get them aligned. So the straight wrist is very important. Now sometimes you're going to collapse it a little bit for reach and stuff like that. And that's okay, but the default position is pretty straight. It's also something that helps your muscles, and I've heard a lot of lectures about this from physical therapists. You know, you're keeping this very straight. You know, you're not, if you do this, you're putting a kink in, you know, the tendons, the ligaments, everything that's like, the muscles that control your fingers are down in here. And so if you're pulling through this kink, that also you're just putting a strain on the whole system. So keeping your wrist straight is very important. Another thing is, you know, to have curved fingers that kind of go down from the top and that you're kind of on your fingertip. And then, you know, it's a little less so as you go to the fourth finger, you know, that you're going to be on the fingertip. But there's a problem if you collapse a finger like this. This is not good. This is not a strong way to be accurate. You can be much more accurate about where you're placing your finger if you're going down on the fingertip. If it's collapsed or kind of like you're playing on the pads of your fingers, this is just much less accurate placement of the fingers, and it's also just, it's kind of slower and clunkier as far as a wrist, you know, a placement. Because if you can get your hand sort of set in a position that's good, you're just going to be moving your fingers. If it's not, then you're kind of moving your whole hand to do everything, and this is just not efficient. It's not going to work for you as well. So that is kind of why we have this picky idea of like how to hold your hand and, you know, get your fingers moving from there, and, you know, get it all set up so it's pretty aligned and you're not torturing any of your ligaments or muscles. Now that said, if you're used to playing a little more, you know, like this might not actually feel comfortable at first. You might have to develop some muscles and some new habits. But in the end, what you're looking for are those specific mechanics. There might be some quirks to how long your arms are or how tall your neck is or various things that make your position slightly different than something you might see in a book or on a video. But just knowing how the mechanics work can really help you to specifically figure out what your position problems and solutions might be. So thank you for listening, and this is Laurie Niles at Violinist.com. Please join us over at the website, Violinist.com, and happy practicing.